Today I'm going to be painting the Grimdark. What I really wanted to do was try 3 different techniques to see if I could get a similar look to this Grimdark style. The idea that I had was to base coat all of the models the same and then try 3 different painting techniques on them and compare them to see which one I liked the most and which process I enjoyed more. The first technique that I wanted to try was the reductive technique. And this involves painting a layer of enamel paint over the model after it's been base coated, and then using mineral spirits to remove that with like a sponge or a Q-tip or cotton bud or whatever you want to call it. And I had done this on a couple of other models just to test that process, and so I thought it would be interesting to try that on these arcoflagellants. The second technique that I wanted to try was basically just using straight washes over the model in order to see if I could achieve a Grimdark technique without using enamel paints. So this is just basically a process of building up translucent or transparent washes over each other in order to create grit and grime and dirt and that kind of an effect, basically mimicking what you would get with an enamel or oil paint wash. Then I was pleasantly surprised when Monument Hobbies announced their Newsh medium for their Pro Acryl line. A lot of other painting companies have been putting out drying retarder for quite a while. The thing about that is that you have to mix it with other stuff in order to make it suitable for painting on miniatures. To begin the project, I primered all of the models black with Style and Res primer from Badger. I've got quite a bit of stock of this, and as soon as I spray through all of it, I'll be giving the Pro Acryl primer a try. What I like about the Style and Res primer is that it'll stick to pretty much any materials that miniatures are made from these days, like resin or metal or plastic, anything like that. This provides a dark undercoat and provides shadow and lining where the mechanical bits meet the organic parts. Over this, I sprayed white from the tops of the models to give them a lighter undercoat for the colors and leaving just a hint of black in the recessed areas for shadow. I plan to use the Zorn palette as a basis for the color scheme of the models. This is kind of in keeping in line with the John Blanche color style prevalent in much of his art for 40K. It primarily consists of the use of ivory, yellow ochre, red, and black. And you can find out more about the Zorn palette in the description below. Using tanned flesh and ivory is going to represent the ivory part of the Zorn palette, and it's going to give me a base color for sort of a sickly Caucasian look to the flesh that I wanted for these cyborgs. Moving on to the red part of the Zorn palette, I used burnt orange in order to base coat all of the fabric on the models. Of course, at the time that I base coated them, I didn't realize that there was a giant cat hair on my paintbrush. Fortunately, this didn't provide any stray marks or anything like that, and I was able to clear that. Burnt orange would create a desaturated red, giving the model an earthy, grounded appearance. What I wanted was a nice even coverage of the color in order to highlight and shadow over it later. All of the metallic parts were then brushed with a base color of dark silver. This gave a really grimy look to the metal bits and provided a really strong foundation to highlight over afterwards. Since I wanted the base to fit in with the desert theme of my other Battle Sister models, I used the golden brown color to represent the ochre in the Zorn palette. This would be toned down in later steps. This particular lighter yellow color represents sand and cracked earth very well, particularly after a wash has been applied to it. I left a little bit of gray where the rubble from the broken concrete was underfoot. For just a pop of color outside of the Zorn palette, I chose jade for the chem injectors to contrast against the warm tones of the yellow, ivory, and rust colors on the rest of the model. All of these steps were duplicated on the other two arcoflagellant models. The first process that I wanted to try was the reductive method with AK's streaking grime. It's a pretty straightforward process of just slathering the stuff all over the model straight from the paint jar. I went ahead and worked it over the top of the base too to create shadows in the crevices and the cracks of the groundwork. After waiting about 15 to 20 minutes or so for the coat to dry, I grabbed a little makeup sponge and began to remove the top layer of paint with mineral spirits. I did this lightly so that it wouldn't damage the paint underneath. I also found it a little difficult to get the sponge in between a few areas and should have cut some of it down to size for a better reach. I also had to keep replacing the sponges frequently as they became saturated with paint. After a while, they would just start pushing the color around instead of removing it. Overall, I was moderately satisfied with the results. For the second process, I used just the basic glaze and wash medium mixed with burnt sienna and dark umber. I always thin out the medium with a little water and a drop or two of flow improver to the mixed water. This breaks up the surface tension that causes water to bead up on the surface and helps it to flow more easily into the creases and details. If I had been paying attention and not shooting video, I would have also added a little dark purple to the mix, which would really punch up the contrast of the shadows. But I can correct that in a later step. here are the two results with the wash medium on the left and the streaking grime on the right. To me, overall, the effect is fairly comparable, aside from the color differences in the mix. On to the Newsh. Again, not paying attention, I mixed this like I normally do with the glaze and wash medium. I really should have added a little more paint to the mix so that when the reduction was done with the sponge, the effect would be a little bit more pronounced. I also didn't wait long enough for the layer to set a bit, and so the sponge wound up removing most of the color. Anyway, that's what this little experiment was all about. I really liked the way that it extended the drying time of the paint, and it really did allow for a longer working time. From there, I just went forward and used the base colors to highlight the fleshy bits and punch up the ivory parts of the Zorn palette. Using a bit of dark purple and burnt sienna in the glaze and wash medium, I applied a thin layer to certain shadow areas just to throw a little bit of reflected light in there. To highlight the rust color of the tunic, I used a bit of regular orange mixed with the same burnt orange of the base color. These highlights were punched up a little bit further by adding a tiny amount of the golden brown to the mix. To detail out the scars, I used more wash medium with a tiny mix of sienna and mahogany to give them a really infected and inflamed skin look. After this dried, I went back with the tan skin and ivory mix to highlight just the ridges of the scars. Then I carefully brushed a mix of silver over all of the metallic parts just to give them a little bit more of a highlight and a more metallic look. All of the hoses, tubes, and wires were painted with mahogany. Then, to wrap all of them up, I went back over the tops of the base with golden brown and then a bit of ivory in the mix to highlight the rocks and the crack textures. I also dusted just a little bit of this color onto their feet to solidify the sandy residue that they would pick up in such an environment. And then I had a really bad idea. I thought I would put a little blood splatter on there to show some gore and so forth from their flailing appendages. I should have actually used a shorter, stiffer brush in order to splatter the blood effect on there, so it came out in kind of larger globs than I really wanted for it to, but well, I don't know, you get the idea. Finally, the base rims were finished with 2 layers of dark umber to match the bases of the other Battle Sisters, who also have a desert theme to them. So after all of that, here's the finished result. Even though each one of these models was painted with sort of a different method or a different process, I still feel that as a unit they all sort of have a cohesiveness to them. And I think that that's due to the way that they were finished out. The highlights and the colors of the base, and basically the the overall general colors that were used in all of the same areas of each model. So there's kind of a unit coherency to them as sort of an overall color scheme. But then again, individually they still work as a single model. If you enjoyed my little painting experiment, then hit that like button down there. It really helps out the video, and if you want to see more of it, do the subscribe thing. That really helps our channel out, and we really want to grow that and try to get the word out to as many viewers as we can. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time on the workbench. Grimdark. And I don't really have a good answer for that.